Welcome to the Liberty Mindset. Come and explore some of the ideas and issues facing our liberty. 2022 is an election year. As libertarians, we ask that you consider voting in the Liberty Mindset. Welcome, and thank you for your time. Well, good enough. So welcome to the head-to-head battle of Jimmy and Gregor.
I have no idea.
Like, it's
your
not even telling
me if I'm
or your influence the winner? That's the question before us now.
I'm really glad that
Let me be clear. You will vote the way in which you want to. That is perfect. We are here to share some opinions, and I hope you'll do the same. Here is my opinion, and then Jimmy, if you'll be so kind as to bring up your opinion, and feel free to go be frank with everybody. Go tell me to pound sand or whatever. That's fine. That's as long as you do it politely and without personal attacks, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. Voting with your heart is a euphemism for doing what feels good. It's not based on any measurable criteria. It's what Democrats thrive on. What do you look for in voting when you're with your conscience? You look for values you hold dear, things that you have come to believe, often through actual study and debate. And you vote for the way that is most closely aligned to those values. I think both of these methods are exactly the same. They give you the same results. And here's why I think this way. In 1989 and 1990, there was a three-way race between presidents for president of the United States between Bill Clinton, George Herbert Walker Bush, the incumbent, and Ross Perot, a Texas businessman. Perot got 18.7% of the vote, the popular vote, a huge amount for a third-party candidate. It also pulled a lot of votes away from George Bush. Bill Clinton won that election and the following one in 1984. Mr. Clinton inherited a balanced budget, an economy on the upswing, and a country that would be looked to for production from the uncertainties of a communist China and the crumbling Soviet Union. I was part of that 18.7% that voted, and I'd seen how the Republican Party was really not working to restore the Constitution, already floundering for over 80 years. Enter 2016. I'm older and wiser now, and Trump has entertained running for president for at least 3 or 4 times since 1982. But this time, he actually did it and got the nomination because of the likes of Mitt Romney and other rhinos that were up against him. Also, people were just tired of the status quo. I knew what kind of president he would be, the tweets and the awful behavior. I wrote in a candidate because I couldn't vote for him. That peace of mind was fleeting as Hillary Clinton almost won. And there's the problem with voting not to win, but to be right. You get to feel good for a while, and that's your reward. By voting for a candidate that can win even when not perfect, you now become part of the constituency. In Oregon, as of October 2022, 34.05% of the state are registered Democrats, 24.56% are registered Republicans, 41.39% is all the rest of us. The largest registered group is the unaffiliated group at 34.65. That actually eclipses the Democrats by a whole 6/6 of a point. For me, voting for the possible winner means I can have a little influence, but that also means voting for the likes of Kotek or Drazen. Both are bad choices. It's again a matter of picking the least worst. I did not see any party shifting since the first election in 1982 from third-party candidates getting X% of the votes, and they always get a single digit, generally. But the numbers show that a third-party voters flock to the other guy, then a shift to drawing them in will take place. So there's my stance. I'm voting for who I think will be a winner, who is the most palatable, which is like the difference between eating dog shit and horse shit, but that's just me. Jimmy, what do you think?
So this is like our last episode that we had together. We talked about star voting, and I feel like star voting solves both the problems here because I don't think either of us are wrong inherently. I think we just have different styles and ways we do things. I think about being a coach for a kid's game. Do you always put in the person that's going to win, or do you put the person in who has potential that could build up to be the person who does win, who might fill in the spot later on? So it's a balance. And right now it's like with enough millennials going into the voting pool, there's a lot of millennials out there that are just tired of both the major parties. But if they will get up and vote tomorrow, they'll vote in the next big election, it could swing things. But I don't think they're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, which is kind of the way it feels like you do when you have to vote for who might win. Do I regret voting for Joe? No. I mean, now she seems a little different now than when I voted for her initially, but I don't regret it. I don't ever have a moment where I wish I hadn't voted for so-and-so. Maybe it's just because I grew up with the mentality that was taught to me that you can't complain about who's in office if you didn't bother to vote. So you always want to play ball. So the question then relies on, do you back up the person you believe in? Because you know that if they can get enough momentum, that there would be enough of a following. Do you back them up with your vote and the people who are like-minded talk to them about how it goes? Or do you just keep playing the same game we've been playing since we started elections, where we just vote for who might win and or the lesser of two evils? I mean, at what point something's got to give? So what point is this going to change if we keep doing the same thing?
Well, and that is a valid point. I mean, you talk about star voting, and in our last episode, it's interesting because I'm so torn on it. Part of me is these socialists are promoting star voting as an option, and that bothers me because if they're promoting it as like, I can tell who you are by the fruits of your labor.
Well, it's the socialist prerogative. Let them vote, let them decide on it, and watch them let the libertarians take it over.
Well, and that's one of the things that I'm mathematically trying to work out. And the more I work it out, the more it is that at least there is a say there. And for those who don't know, that was episode 10 that we're talking about. You can go look it up on any podcast, go to Liberty Mindset, look up Liberty Mindset on Apple and Spotify and on YouTube. Look up episode 10. We talked about the star voting system specifically here in Oregon. We went into it in great detail. It was a good episode. And they've talked about things like that on the Oregon Libertarian podcast that happens on Will Hobbs' channel on at 6 o'clock on Friday. They've talked about some of that. And, I think that a new voting system is absolutely essential for our freedoms. Yeah, I really do, because as you pointed out, what we're doing is not working. And I go back to the idea that in 1984, Ross Perot was a forgotten entity. There was no partying trying to align to pick up those voters, that 20% of the population almost that voted for him. There was no effort at all because, well, he was the guy that lost. Right. And I know people who have been very involved with elections for many years. We've talked about this exact subject, and what do candidates look at? And they look at two things. They look at why they lost and why the other guy won. And that is where my shift personally came, because, if I can be the spoiler for the bad, and only, even if it means taking the bad, which again, I'm not saying that either candidate of the two leading candidates are good. Okay. They both have, a lot of negatives, but some of them have a couple of small positives, and it's like, yeah, take your choice. But then when the votes are counted and they see who voted for the winner, and they realize that 30% of the vote went to that candidate of undecided or unaffiliated, all of a sudden they have to cater to those people. And that's just, that's where I'm at. So I'm going to let you have one more shot at this, a last word. And then we can open up calls for people. I know Leon said he can't unmute. But if anybody else comes in, we'll open up calls. So I'm going to let you have the last say.
I mean, it's really a tough spot, I will say, because I instinctually I grew up in a Democratic area, and that's just what you did. I got tired of, well, you vote for this evil or you vote for that evil. And from that point forward, I've talked to a lot of people who have been voting for much longer than I have. My first election, what was my first election? Obama, I think. So it gives you some perspective there. I still have a lot to learn. But at the same time, I don't want to regret who I voted for. I don't want it to weigh on my mind either. Because that just seems like that would deter people just in general. If you feel guilty for the way you voted, some people will find that to be fuel to do better next time. But there's a large majority of people who are relatively nihilistic and will find that defeating. And I don't know where I land on that spectrum at this point because I'm still trying to figure all that out.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why we're having this conversation, to just throw these ideas out there and give folks an opportunity. Leon, check your address bar in your browser and see if you have a red microphone up there. If you do, right click on it and select allow access all the time. And then you should look down on look at the bottom of the screen and you'll see a microphone with a line across it. If you hit that, you should be able to unmute. But you have to be a caller first. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting conundrum because I totally get where you're coming from. You know, vote for the one that you leans more into your beliefs, at least out of the two. But that just still to me feels like just the opposite side of the coin of voting for the lesser of two evils. Instead of focusing on the things that you don't like about them, you're focusing on the things that you may like about them instead.
Yeah,
which I suppose is a better way to do it overall.
Well, I'm not talking about a better way. I'm just talking about the way I've come to think. And to be honest,
better in the sense of it's. I lost my connection.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Your phone just, now you went mute, so I don't know what happened. Check. Okay.
You can keep talking.
Okay.
I'm on my car.
Well, anyway, so, I got you. And, all right, so, Leon, do you have a microphone up there, and then you have to, I don't see... It says waiting for callers, so I don't have... Well, why isn't he... All right, I should be able to do this. Come on. There's nothing I have to do. There we go. There's the button I was looking for. Now you should be able to unmute and talk to us and yell at me and tell me what an evil person I am.
So we don't know who's evil yet.
There, I see an unmuted Leon.
Oh, now can we hear me?
Yay. I can
hear you.
Okay. So here's how I'm looking at it. We have, let's say Joe brings the ball to the playground. And he's playing ball with Leslie. And Leslie says, hey, we should invite Bob and June over to play ball. Well, it's Joe's ball. Joe says, well, okay, let's invite Bob and June. Bob and June come over, take the ball, and start playing a completely different game that completely isolates the original people and the owner of the ball. That's what our government is right now. We have a Republican and a Democrat party who has completely isolated the owner of the ball, the people of whichever nation you want to use. We have the right to go take our ball back. And that's the entire point of voting for your conscience, to take the thought processes that you have, the morals that you have, the values that you have, and apply them to a distinct and what's the word I'm looking for here? Unique pattern of influence against the platform of the people who are trying to take your ball. You have the right to take your ball back and go and play with somebody else. If you're voting your conscience, you're taking the ball back and going and playing with somebody else. If you're voting for whoever's going to win, what you're doing is letting the schoolyard bullies keep bullying you away from your ball.
Well, but
it's not the same as voting for the way you feel. It's taking an educated approach to the future that you are going to be participating in. if you're going to vote the way you feel, that's like not voting at all. But if you're going to take the time and effort to do the research and find who you think and who you believe strongly follows the same principles that you do, that's voting your conscience. That's not wasting your vote. That's not keeping the status quo. That's forcing a change within our society. That's what's important. If all we're going to do is keep the bullies in power, which is not power, then we're giving it up on our own. And the next thing we're going to be in is a shooting war. And nobody wants that.
Yeah. We already have an issue with the fact that people only vote for the names that they see, or the stuff because people aren't doing research. So I mean that's another weight on the whole system right now too. Is that people only will go for what they're familiar with. So you already have that. If you have enough people, I feel like voting on your conscience with an actual educated feeling, emotion, know that it actually does power all of it at once. Yes, there are feelings and emotions in it because you are passionate about what you believe in. We all are. But how we choose to vote really was going to shape that for our future later on.
And that's the problem. We've got this idea that strategic voting is the only way to go. It's been pushed upon us for the last, 160 years. But the reality of it is the biggest changes in our world have come from people who did not strategically vote. Abraham Lincoln was supposed to be a third-party candidate. It was at the end of the Whigs and the beginning of the Republicans. It didn't make any sense to vote for him because he was going to lose, but people wanted change, so they voted for him. They put him into office, and as a result, we ended up with the Emancipation Proclamation, and eventually, what was it, the 13th Amendment?
Well, that's almost accurate. He ran once, and he gave up his electors in order to make peace with the party, and then turned around and ran the second time as a Republican, and that time won. So he was actually the largest elector. He had, when he gave up his electors, he was actually the one that had the more electors than anybody else, but he didn't have enough to win. And in order to get the election taken care of, he voluntarily gave them up. So he sort of had his own moment where he realized that he could not win, and he gave his vote to the least worst candidate, which ended up being, terrible, granted, I'll admit freely. But, I mean, he actually sort of did that on his own.
That's withdrawal. That's not the same thing as having the public vote strategically. That's him with making a strategic withdrawal so that the nation can move forward. But anybody else could have done the same thing.
Right, but and so what you're saying is voting for the 6% candidate does what?
The 6% candidate becomes the 8% candidate, becomes the 10% candidate, becomes the 30% candidate. We only need, in a three-way election, we only need 34% in the state. We're top of the pile. We don't need 50%.
It can grow exponentially.
I don't even need that much. We have basically a four-way election. I need 26% to win. That's it. So it's not a strategic vote that's going to win. What's going to happen is when you strategically vote, we all lose. That's the problem. I'm tired of, I don't want to spend my time following a bunch of pigs around in a pigsty. I want to spend my time walking in the fresh air without having to step in crap all the time. And I'm not getting that by watching people vote strategically.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, by voting strategically, I do understand the concept behind it, but I feel like you're not giving momentum. That it's not that the person who's being elected for it necessarily needs to see all of it, but it's everyone else who needs to realize that they don't have to keep doing it the same way everybody's been doing it. A side note problem is that we have to make it louder than it is. So that's what makes it really difficult.
We do. That is a problem. But we have that option, and if we utilize the voice that we do have, and we keep saying, look, these guys are both trash. Let's pick the trash man instead of the trash can. We'll do better. We'll have better.
And I am on Leon's side on this one as on a lot of it. I do understand where Gregor's coming from with, the strategic aspects of it and wanting to be an active part of the way the world is. I just don't know if that's the way that we elicit change.
Well, here's a good example. The best example is the current gubernatorial election. The Republican candidate won with 23% of the vote, 23.6, I think it was. If that's what we're going to pick, I mean, their own party didn't think that they were special in a way that would produce an over 50%. Why would we vote for them now? Their own party isn't happy with their choice. Why would we think that that is a good idea? The non-affiliated candidate knew that they couldn't compete against Tobias Reed and Tina Kotek. So instead of running in the primary, she dropped out of her party. She put it on her website. It's still there to this day, as far as I know, because I haven't looked in a couple of months, that nothing had changed except that she had given up the party. She still believed the things that she was. So she's still a Democrat in her mind, but she knows that she can't compete in a primary. Well, it turns out she can't compete in a general either, according to the latest propaganda polls.
So, the polls are, we all know that the polls are actually pretty awful. So, and they have been for several years. So poll numbers is a tough thing. And I admit freely that poll numbers are a tough thing to base anything on.
But the problem is with the polls that the people don't know that you have to pay for those, and that they're based purely on for propaganda. They have no scientific purpose.
There's another really big thing that bothers me a lot, honestly, about the way our system is right now, is I feel like I have not left high school. This is a popularity contest over and over and over and over again. And I get it that we're supposed to vote for, who we want to represent us in many facets. But instead of voting for what would truly represent the individuals, we're voting for whoever's coolest. Just like prom, just like homecoming. It's all these sorts of things just repeating over and over again.
And I was not one of the cool kids in high school, so I'm with you on that. That is exactly, it does feel that way.
Yeah.
And I like.
I was not one of the cool kids either. Just preface.
Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe we're already conditioned to think like that because of our experiences in high school. So on that note, take your kids out of school and homeschool them, because that's the only way you get out of that cycle if they're going to condition you for a popularity contest.
Well, and based on our education system, that's not an argument I would ever argue against.
Either.
I really should have done that to my daughter 15, 25 years ago. So I should have homeschooled her.
I went to public school in a lot of them, but I will say that I benefited from parents that made me think critically. But I did still fall into the role that schools teach you to just sit, listen, and obey the propaganda. You just fall into it because all your friends are doing it, and then the next thing you know, you just kind of cast it away. Even if you are somebody who critically thinks during class or outside of class, you're not applying it necessarily to the things that matter, like voting and the way that our system is.
And that's the problem with our voting system. It's built upon this idea that the average person is not smart enough to handle the information that they need to handle. And well, I've been experiencing it when I get a couple of radio appearances here and there, and I get a minute or two. It's hard to be able to put together a cohesive platform based on sound bites. So what has to happen is that you have to leverage other bits of information, other platforms, and then push everything to that platform. And once you can do that, then the opportunity is there for the average person to decide whether or not they want to jump in with both feet and try to learn how to swim in it, or if they want to just touch on the surface and then be angry with you for having that thought process.
No, that's true. And you bring up an interesting point, because I think a major portion of our problem with our current election system is the way we are as a society, the way we think. And I mean that, famous line from Men in Black, people are stupid. A person is smart. And, when they turn into the herd mentality, all intelligence seems to flow outward and away and not anywhere in, the realm of possibility or reality. And part of that's the education system. Part of that is just, we are so instantaneously big deal on everything. Everything we try so hard to be socially this, socially that, and it's all about the likes and the what happened on my Twitter feed or what happened on my Facebook page. It's all of that stuff is fun, but it's really not important. What's important is how things work in reality. And so many people have no actual clue. I mean, our president keeps telling us our democracy is at risk. Guess what? We're in a republic in the state of Oregon. We're in a republic in the state of United States of America. We're not a democracy. I don't want a democracy.
Amen.
The French Revolution proved democracy doesn't.
The one thing I'm curious about, and I just want to throw this out there, and it could just be a bunch of BS that my brain just decided to throw together because, my Adderall's worn off by now. So we learn all these sorts of different paradigm, like the dichotomy and everything in high school. And at the time when we first constructed this sort of elections, we also weren't living as long. Do we think that the fact that we see more elections, that we see more changes or lack of change now has changed that system and how we perceive it? Does that even make sense?
As a resident old fart, I will not argue against.
I was curious, honestly.
Well, just so that people know, I'm the tail end of the boomer generation, so that gives you a ballpark of my age. My first election was in 1982. It was the midterms for President Reagan, and I experienced the power of a good president. Perfect president? No. Good president? Yes. From the international perspective, from 1981 to 1983, I lived in a third world country called Lesotho, Africa, a beautiful little member of the British Commonwealth in the southern part of Africa, right next to Swaziland and the Republic of South Africa. I saw what a president could be to a country. Now, what I also learned from that is that the United Nations and the world depend on America for far too much, and we need to withdraw from that. I'm not a big fan of being. I'm a big fan of being strong militarily. I'm not a big fan of being a superpower that exercises its wisdom. I mean, this whole Ukraine thing is a prime example of what we should not be doing. The way we withdrew from Afghanistan is a prime way of what we should not be doing. Any place we currently have actions is probably illegal based on the Constitution. Sorry, I don't think that, any conflict we're in falls under the General Declaration of War that occurred in 2001. So, our country has been, and it's part, that's, you hear some of us libertarians especially talk about the industrial, the military industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us against, and it all came true. So do we need industry? Sure. Do we need to have a strong military to protect ourselves? Yes, I believe we do. And having said that, I really like the idea of the states having more and more control over it. The Libertarian Party recently, just giving out a shout out there, came up with a resolution to, their official policy is that the Oregon National Guard should not be used on foreign soil unless there is a declared war. Guess what? I can agree with that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very...
Definitely.
I'm tired of watching our citizens go to a foreign war for the sake of making sure there's more jobs available. Because that's what it is. National Guard has jobs they go to on a daily basis. When they're called up, they have to vacate those jobs. And some of them don't come back.
Yeah.
But all of them do. So it's only a temporary fix. It's better to go ahead and stimulate the economy to create more jobs than without spending money with the government. We'll throw that in there.
Well, and that brings us to manufacturing and making jobs available here, which, Trump was doing until COVID came along. And then he made a wrong turn. Don't get me wrong, I still don't like Trump, but there's some things he did right, and bringing back jobs to this country was a good thing. And we really need to focus on that kind of thing, because we can't manufacture some of the things we used to manufacture. We're not capable of it anymore. Artemis, the space launch system that is currently NASA's breaking its head against, is a perfect example. It is not a manufactured or an innovative system. It is cobbled together from the old pieces of 50.
I will say one thing that I have said for quite a long time, probably since I was a young teen. I am tired of messing with every other country and ignoring the problems of our own. And I know a lot of it is red tape, it's laws, it's all these other things that get in the way of it. But why aren't we spending that same energy and that same money trying to fix the issues within our own country, within our own states? A lot of it I'm learning is the fact that there are just way too many hurdles. It's easier to fix another country than it is to fix our own. But does that mean we need to dismiss it? And that's something that's bothered me for a very long time.
The reason is really rather simple. If they fix it, they don't have a way to get you to elect them again, to get you to keep voting strategically. If they fix it, there's nothing for them to complain about and cause an issue with. I saw, when was it? I think it was April or May. It was the end of the session. David Gomberg and Dennis Linthicum both issued out newsletters within the same couple of days. Both of them referenced the same thing. Both of them blamed each other for it. Both of them. They referenced the same subject and they blamed the other party. If you're going to continue to strategically vote, this is what you're going to get. Nothing will get fixed because they will simply say, "Oh, the Republicans didn't want it, and so the Democrats weren't able to pass it." Or they'll say the Democrats didn't want it, so the Republicans weren't able to pass it, and they'll just keep blaming each other for it. That's what I'm looking at with this gubernatorial election. I watched 2 or 3 of the debates. They all said the same thing. They all said they were going to spend our money. They all said they were going to tax us to oblivion. They all said they were going to continue with the status quo and not fix a blasted thing. Our state needs balance, and you can't get that if you're going to vote strategically. You're going to just end up with the same old forever and a day, and you have to take the ball back. It's time to go and find another playground to go play in, because the bullies aren't going to let us play with our own ball. Simple as that. And now I can shut up.
You got a better place to end, Jimmy?
I'm grooving at the moment. Actually, I'm going to have to wrap it up here. I don't know if you guys want to keep discussing.
Oh, no. I'm not going to touch what Leon just said. He had a perfect closing statement, and I'm going to let it sit there.
Let's let it simmer. I love it.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this call-in episode. Your vote is yours. It is not my place to tell you for whom or how to vote. Our only goal is to stimulate thought. Please be honest about what you get out of your choice. In the end, you have to live with how you vote. That is the most important thing. Make a choice this election you can be happy with. Please vote. And as always, seek truth and stay curious. Thank you for joining us at the Liberty Mindset.
Thank you.